there's one more thing that I had, was that I had forgotten you wanted to, what we had agreed to interview me about. And that I realized there's so many things that I want to be interviewed about. And I noticed that it's often like in the here and now, there's so many topics that it's almost like I don't go into them without some kind of clarity about necessity, about which topic to go into. And so, yeah, being interviewed really works for me to draw out what I would have to say if
Mhm.
somebody asked. And I wonder if there's some kind of way to maybe get more in touch with, or turn up my anger and notice from the inside what wants to come out, when there's not like necessity or questions drawing it out from the outside.
Mm. Yeah, I get it. I have the, can you say that? I have the same thing, like so many stuff to talk about, and then okay, what's the necessity for what now? Well, I have enough anger at the moment that I really would like to interview uh, about Torus Technology. And just for the ones who see that recording, I'm sitting here with Nicole Hartley Bradford, which is at the moment at the Possibility Coaching Bridge House in Czech Republic still, I think.
Yes.
And yeah, and I'm really angry because I saw like I saw how we like used this technology in the Heal from School lab. And my necessity is that I want to introduce Torus technology more in groups, because I'm a lot with groups, and especially I'm a lot with um, young adults and teenagers, and I mostly do with them movements and teaching dance and stuff. So it's more the so-called teaching environment, and at the same time, it's not like it's really open. Yeah, and I would really like to hear from you, like what is Torus technology, and how do you use it right now? And then we will maybe go from there.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. What is Torus Technology? Mm, yeah, what comes is that it's this set of distinctions, maps, tools, and processes that are especially for groups, so that groups can function, groups can do things in ways that aren't so hierarchical and aren't so much about power over, power under dynamics, without kind of swinging into the area of everybody talks about everything all of the time. And yeah, another thing I would say about it is that Torus Technology are the distinctions, tools, maps, and processes that have been developed by possibility managers for groups.
Mm.
And that's not to say that other game worlds or other people don't have great technologies for groups. Uh, and from a personal perspective, Torus Technology is the toolkit for groups that I'm most turned on about, because I've used a lot of different group technologies and like got to these places with groups of like, something's really missing here. What is it? And Torus Technology includes the things so far that I've noticed this is missing. And I don't notice things missing from Torus Technology, not so far anyway.
Mm. Can you say like on a practical level, how does it go? Like, is that possible right now?
Like how it goes when you're using Torus Technology.
Yeah, like let's say there's a group right now and everyone is meeting, and like what are you doing? Like, how does it go? What are the
Mm,
questions or
yeah. Yeah, yeah, great question. I mean, it goes how it goes. And when the group is using Torus technology, it's not as if, I mean, first of all, you don't go from not using it to using it just like that,
Mm-hmm.
because these tools and processes and distinctions and maps, they they don't just, you know, and to really get inside of each person the different uh, like components of it so that it is being used is different from this is Torus technology and the list of distinctions, processes, maps, tools. Like once it's underway, and this was a question for me going into the Torus technology creation and discovery week was, yeah, what does come first? Like how to roll it out in a group, say that is new. Like we don't know what Torus technology is. We heard it's amazing. Like what's the first step? And then how does it go? And I sort of broke it down in a way that works for me, where it's about each person having their own authority. So that's a process. I mean, that takes a while to, I'm still working on getting my authority back and keeping it and having it and speaking from it. Mm. So being centered, grounded, and in my personal bubble of space so that I do have my own authority and I'm keeping it and I'm using it translates a little bit into being part of a group where everyone has that as something that they're practicing and they're building. So that then when the people in the group are relating to each other, they're really relating from that where where their thoughts are their own, where their feelings are their own, and where then it becomes possible to use feedback and coaching more effectively also when when being in this first position of a possibilitator means that I'm not so hookable. So being in first position, working on becoming unhookable, each on the individual basis, and also being on each other's team about all of that. It's like a foundation for the other parts of Torus technology to have a chance to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then a real central part of it is this basic decision making technology, resistance decision making. From really small moment to moment proposals between just two people about, you know, how about we record this
Mm-hmm.
starting now? I mean, even then resistance decision making is happening because in the pause that a person gives about would that work for you,
Mm-hmm.
or what do you think and feel about that, or how's that for you, there's this gap where the other person checks for their resistance, and this distinction of what's resistance, mm, which is different from just speaking from resistance right away, is a key part too, I think.
Yeah,
And
can,
then there are all these other things that can be used according to the necessity of the group.
yeah, yeah. I was just thinking that maybe we make a short demonstration about what resistance decision making is, like how you actually do it in a like now we're two people, but when you have a group. And I remember we did it like the way we show if we have resistance is either if you have zero resistance, you hold your hands like that and not like that because it's not a car. But like and if like and it's this is zero resistance and this is 10 resistance. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
this is
so I
like the maximum resistance you can have.
have,
And yeah, so when there's a proposal in the space, and it can come from anybody,
mm-hmm,
it can be yeah. Mm, I mean, an example that comes up over and over is something like if someone's making a proposal about logistics,
Mm-hmm.
And this would happen in a logistics space,
Mm-hmm.
which is another discovery that we had when we were studying and working with Torus Technology in the Creation Week, was this distinction of different kinds of spaces for different purposes, opening and closing them and navigating to them consciously on purpose, according to the necessity. So in a logistics space, it's very common to have something like a proposal to change the time of something. Like usually a group who's working together has some kind of time that they're already working with. And this can also be part of creating a schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be, I propose that we move the lunch preparation time forward an hour so that we can complete this convergence. And is there any resistance to this?
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing about it is that the resistance, even on the low levels, like sometimes, and the way to use it is just to notice resistance and show the fingers that go with the resistance without knowing why,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily understanding what my resistance is. And it can turn out to be something like, will you be more specific about the times that you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And then the proposal becomes clearer and clearer. And then if there's resistance to something that's clear, like, I have 7 resistance because it seems like it's being forgotten that someone's coming at this time to do something. And so the resistance reveals the necessity of the group. And then the proposal can be agreed on. And at the part when the resistance comes, and then the proposals changed a little and changed a little and changed a little with the resistance, and then the proposal has no resistance,
Mm.
and it's a go. And it's so cool to see it in action, to be part of it being in action, and to notice the de-escalation of the barriers to moving forward with something that there's a lot of impulse to move forward with.
Mm. So you decide first what space you are in right now as a group, like if it's about logistical stuff or about other stuff, and then someone makes a proposal about maybe a time, and then the one who's giving the proposal asking for resistance, everyone is showing their hands, and then if you have resistance like 2 3 however much fingers, you ask the different people what's the resistance, and then you
An
navigate.
important part about that
Hmm.
An important part about that is to start with the person who has the most resistance.
Yeah. Okay.
Because when they share their resistance, it might take care of other people's resistance also. And that saves just time.
Great. So, and then what this does is that people who have resistance, that they can navigate, maybe the proposal was not clear enough or precise enough, and then this will get more clear, and at the same time, people can navigate out of their resistance, and then there gradually is a decision basically made for this proposal. That's how I
Yeah, it's like
got it right now.
the proposal emerges into an a, like a thing we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Another part that, what was it that came was, oh yes, this is so key that, so many different kinds of group decision making processes. The people say things and then that's it, and then somebody else changes the proposal. In resistance decision making, if I have resistance, I'll share my resistance,
Mm-hmm.
and then I or anyone else can say, okay, I have the next proposal, or can speak the next proposal into the space, or that the kind of evolved version of the proposal with that resistance mixed into it, into the space.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really, it's such a cool way of radical responsibility happening where nobody's waiting for their turn or waiting for the person in charge, or even if one person brought the first proposal, it's not their proposal, that it goes back to them all the time. It's the group's proposal, and it's created by the group for the group, with the resistance of the group, with the wisdom of the group being woven in.
Hmm. Cool. And are there like other forms of decision making too in the Torus technology, or is this just the basic or the
Yeah,
most used one?
what we discovered is really, this is it. This is
Mm.
the only form of decision making that you really need, because it applies to any time that there's a decision to be made.
Mm. Yeah, and also what I found, because what you said about the like you say what your resistance is, and then you make either like you say what the resistance is, and you have maybe also next proposal, but really having the next proposal makes it also so that it's not destroying in a way the group or the structure, because I also like there are other techniques where you just, it's called differently, but where you also go with that, and you say why, like why you don't want that or what's the problem, but then it just stops. And in that there can be a lot of, like in possibility management we say, like underworld, like the shadow side of things. It can be your gremlin that just wants to destroy the space or whatever proposal was made. And with this technique I found, like, okay, that it's like what you said, that it's going forward, like you have resistance, and yes, we are here so that your resistance is heard, but also what is your proposal, like,
Yeah.
so that it goes in the direction of, I would say, something positive, and not being stuck in this everything is bad kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or that's how I noticed it.
And
And
this is where other parts of Torus technology come in also.
mhm,
If during a resistance decision making process, if someone does have like some kind of reactivity, then how it goes with that is that the purple card is the tool to use.
mm,
Somebody holds up a purple card that is a quick way of communicating, I see you're having an emotion,
mhm,
and 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 this is where conscious feelings work is also super foundational to Torus technology. Without the distinction between emotions, which are from the past, and are doorways for healing, while emotion or feelings are about the present and are fuel for handling things and information for handling things.
mhm,
What's become so clear is that when there is an emotion that someone's trying to use to handle things, like to create a proposal with, or to bring their resistance about a proposal,
mm,
with this emotional, it's like there's this energy that is not about the here and now. It's not about this proposal. It's some kind of fear from the past or some kind of anger from the past, and
mhm,
it's being used in creating this proposal and evolving this proposal. And that's no help. And this is what I've seen so often in groups using other decision making technology, is that someone gets a button pushed or someone gets hooked, and
mhm,
there's and then it turn then the conversation devolves into, gets way off track from the proposal that's on the table or
mm,
in the space. And with a purple card, it's such a beautiful way to pause the process, check in with the person if it's an emotion or a feeling, and then they can discover that for themselves or with the help of the group. And then they can either go, write it down in their beat book that they have an emotion about this, and then their emotion is in their beat book. Or if it's really strong and it works out, they can say, can I have a space holder? And off they go into the EHP dojo space where that emotion is processed. And then when they come back to the group, they can find out where things are at. And this way, people's emotions and old energetics aren't getting in the way of what's emerging in the here and now. And to me, this is just so cool, because this is so often how projects, groups, even families end up breaking down and breaking apart, because this emotional reactivity is not about this group in the here and now. It's about the past, isn't discerned as such and used for healing. And that can only work for so long before it gets to be not working.
Yeah.
So yeah, the purple card.
Yeah, and just to say for the viewers, like the purple card, mine is now in the book in the next room.
Yeah,
but that the purple card is a real card. Like you can draw your own purple card. It is, mine is purple. It is purple. And that when you are in the group setting and you have like this group meeting, that everyone has this card. So it's not also this thing of, okay, someone noticed emotional reactivity of someone or reactivity, that it's actually not maybe one person who holds that up. Then maybe it can be also about this person being emotionally reactive, but that you also have a reference if you're like, I don't know, 20 people and 15 holding up the purple card, then you have direct feedback. Okay, this is like emotional reactivity right now, or you're not in the here and now, and it's like it can be really mind blowing, but at the same time it's so helpful. And then you spoke about terms like beat book and EHP dojo. And you said that it's you can write that down in the beat book. For me, a beat book is a book where I write down stuff of my like path of evolution, like what I notice about myself, things that I want to heal or that I want to look into. And yeah, and maybe because you said it like, what do you mean then when someone is in emotional activity and he goes off to an HP dojo? Like how does it go when you are in a group meeting and you're doing Torus Technology and someone is an emotional reactive and he wants to look at this immediately? What do you do then?
Yeah, in some cases it works to have that person ask right there and then, will someone hold space for me right now? To use this reactivity as a doorway for healing and transformation. And if someone in the circle puts up their hand and off they go, they literally get up off their chairs and go to a space that is designated as an emotional healing process space or dojo. And this can be a small room or any space where people can be loud and go right into the process while it's still hot, so to speak. And if someone doesn't put up their hand, then they can write it down and do a process later. Someone might put up their hand and say, but not right now. How about we do it in an hour and a half? And that in itself is a miniature, tiny little resistance decision-making process.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah. And it just, this is, I mean, for people to function collaboratively, for people to be able to be collaborative in a group, as far as I can tell, requires these distinctions of conscious feelings work. So the distinction between an emotion and a feeling, also the distinction between a thought and a feeling. So often I've seen in group situations where someone's like, I think this is a stupid idea. Okay, you think it's a stupid idea. How do you feel? Oh, I feel it's a stupid idea. It's like, right. And they don't have the distinction between thinking and feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And once that's developed and the person can be like, oh, I think this is a stupid idea, I feel scared about it and mad about it, and then be able to unfold it. And when the emotional intensity is high, it's really starts to cloud people's ability to just work with what's there, work with who's there,
Mm-hmm.
to build a proposal that will work to create whatever the group wants to create.
Mm-hmm.
And when those emotions are kind of, not popping up all over the place, or when they are popping up, they're being seen to, they're being put in beat books for later, or going into EHP dojo for processing right away, makes for this smooth territory to just keep rolling and keep creating and like really fly as a group, rather than this like, oh, there's another one, oh, all these emotions and this little reactivity, big reactivity that makes for a bumpy ride that becomes so typical sometimes, and so, yeah, exhausting
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and time consuming.
Yes. Yeah, I get that. I was just thinking while you talked about. I mean, it requires a lot of distinctions before. That's what I also get, so that you can really use it. I mean, it's part of the possibility management context, and mostly I've seen people use Torus technology when like these distinctions are established. So
Yeah,
and and yes, that's like the first steps, when because I thought about my teenagers that I'm working with at the moment, and like we are like 10 in a group. And I was okay, first thing, yes, the distinctions about thoughts and feelings, and also yeah, depending even on that, wanting to go there and speak about their feelings is a big
yeah,
thing. But at the same time, I was thinking about that we are trained to be so adaptive because of school, and especially at that age. How do you, I don't even know if this question can be answered, but how do you mm, yeah, how do you work in a group meeting, when yes, people can share their resistance, and but what if people are adaptive and it's so much survival and they never have resistance? And but because I was thinking this can also like really make the decision making kind of sloppy, or make stuff go out sideways.
yeah.
And how, yeah, are there tools about that, like despite the fact that maybe speaking to the person, about the strategy and working with that, but especially with young people, I noticed that they're, because mostly they're still in school or so trained to just say yes to everything.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
this is so, I love what you're opening up here,
yeah.
because what we started to get more clarity about is that in a way it only takes one person with more distinctions to bring the distinctions they have, and start to help the group uh, roll in new ways. And this is where, for me as a possibility coach
Hmm.
and a possibility coach trainer, this is so, it's so valuable to have the skills of possibility coaching. And and even as a person who's mm, yeah, there are ways to kind of stealthily bring in Torus technologies
Hmm.
without, yeah, and it's this thing where it's not about, we use no Torus technologies and then we use all of them, because in a way anyone is using Torus technology a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's about kind of building and making it more clear and more obvious and more of a conscious experiment to use it, and then it's this spiral learning, including for whoever's like leading, which in the context of radical responsibility, a leader is simply someone who's going first, right here, right now, which is very different from someone who always goes first or someone who goes first most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's not that it's wrong or bad for someone to go first a lot of the time. It might mean that the other people in the space are adaptive. And this is when it can be so helpful for that person who has the impulse to go first, to use their impulse to draw people out, and to
Yeah.
say, and to use their fear really to draw people out, because they're often indicators. When I'm part of a group and I notice someone hanging back, using my scanners to notice that, having my numbness bar low so that I feel the fear of like, wait a minute, they're not saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
Is the group missing their intelligence? Is the
Mm-hmm.
group missing their wisdom? And to say, I have a story that you have something to say. Will you say
Mm-hmm.
it? Like, I really want your wisdom here as part of this. It's going to be so much more juicy and fun for me, and I think for the group, for you to have your energy in this process.
Mm.
And
I'm getting goosebumps when you
maybe,
say that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe then that person goes look at where they're like, I feel scared to say what I have to say. It's like, you
Mm-hmm.
feel scared what you have to say. Is that a feeling? Is that about the here and now, or is that something that happens a lot for you?
Mm-hmm.
Because if it does happen a lot, it's probably an emotion, and this is a perfect doorway for an emotional healing process.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be it for that time and day and that person.
Mm-hmm.
Because they might come to you later and be like, okay, what's this emotional healing process stuff? I've never heard of that. I mean, they might be too scared to ask right there and then about that too, if they already have fear about speaking up in a group.
Mm-hmm.
And if, as Torus Technology, it's like this shift into different spaces. Sometimes there's a process creation space that shifts for a few moments into more of a training space where distinctions are being brought, maps are being landed in the space, and then that's when it can be really helpful for whoever's the kind of the space holder who's more often going first to be like, I'm going to shift for a moment into I'm going to pause our decision making process right now and shift into more of a training space.
Mm. Okay.
And even with a pause, it's like scanning for resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, keep going. And some people are really great with their masks and their walls energetically, that it might not come out until later. It might come out in a wonky way. But at least when someone in the space has tools to use and bring and practice with, there will be feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and really this is the number one thing that I think makes a space ripe for Torus Technology, is that if there's the bright principle of experimenting
Mm-hmm.
happening, and if people have shifted into this identity of experimenting, this makes so much more room for feedback and coaching also, and for feedback and coaching to go in all directions between people, not just in one direction,
Mm-hmm.
to the person who asks for it, or to the coming out from the gremlins that are like, I have feedback and coaching for you, but maybe they're not saying it. They're just like, you're like this and you're like that.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's really this toolkit that has all kinds of mm, parts to it, and then the skill building of using the tools.
Mm. Yeah.
And it was really cool to notice we started to design a Torus Technology trainer training.
Mm-hmm.
And what we noticed was that, yes, people who already have conscious feelings distinctions and already do parts work and gremlin work and underworld work who use possibility management, there are also people who don't, who don't identify as capital P possibilitators, who have the experience from facilitating, from working in other, like experimenting already,
Mhm.
and working with their feelings, maybe doing some kind of shadow work, who could become part of a Torus Technology trainer, like space holder training. And what we realized was like, okay, what would be needed? Like, what can we imagine would be needed so that those people would kind of start to have, or clarify that they have, um, the distinctions that it takes for this foundation part. And what we realized was that it was probably an EHP warm-up dojo. So just somewhere where the basics of conscious feelings work are delivered, so that then the people can get that clarity and use the EHP dojo space and start to participate more in the holding up the purple card, and the really what amounts to coaching that happens
Mm.
even in a decision making space.
Mm. And where can you do that training? Like where?
It will be it will be built into the Torus Technology Spaceholder training,
Mhm.
and it's also available from people like you, Christina, who do this for feelings, like introductions and development. People
Mm.
like me, I do it, and I call it the Emotional Healing Process EHP Warm Up Dojo. Usually do a 5-week series or a tumbling series where people can start anytime, and I recommend they at least come for 3 months so that they can be doing this early conscious feelings development work, where, for example, I start to come alive in all 4 of my feelings, start to learn to distinguish them, to unmix them, to speak from them instead of speaking about them, mm,
Mhm.
to just start to be able to inner navigate so that I'm getting the information from each of the pure feelings distinctly rather than them being mixed, which creates different states. Yeah, and there are many people who are holding space for different parts of conscious feelings work, like rage clubs, fear clubs. Now there are sadness and joy clubs.
Mhm.
Expand the Box delivers the basic conscious feelings maps. It's a really great way to get started. There's Clinton's book, Conscious Feelings, that people can read and experiment with. There are possibility teams where that's happening.
We will put this whole list under this video so people can check that out.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
just want to put in a little bit about the possibility management game world in particular. And something I
Mhm.
so love about it is that Clinton, the originator, Clinton Callahan, the originator of possibility management, has been sharing his discoveries and the discoveries of the others and encouraging people to share our own discoveries open source on the internet. So there are there's so many resources made available in the possibility management game world by the different possibilitators and trainers and trainers. That generosity just blows my mind.
Mhm.
And also I think in a way it becomes more possible when someone's emotional reactivity about being stolen from, having their ideas stolen, or being cut out of something, or mm, I mean, really, it's so much about that. This whole win lose way of the
There's no
human
risk, yeah.
condition.
There's no
Yeah,
yeah.
that just starts to get flattened out.
Mhm.
And what really became so obvious during the week we had here at the Possibility Coaching Bridge House about Torus Technology was that flattening the hierarchy, like turning this like pyramid triangle into this circle,
Mhm.
mm, was it's an inside outside job. Like there's this hierarchy that I have inside myself, and to wake all the different parts of myself up so that my parent ego state isn't dominating my child ego state, my gremlin's not coming in to kind of keep it all low drama, persecuting, rescuing, victim swirling, that that a group where Torus technology is being used starts to become even more a flattened circular toroidal field where where using each person's authority, they they move how they want to move and they go where they want to go. They say no, they say yes, they say stop, they say wait, they say, they ask dangerous questions and go and create what they want to create
Mhm.
according to the necessity that pulls these bright principles and archetypal lineages through.
Yeah, and it's really like, Taurus, like the human energy field and all this stuff going around.
Yeah.
Yeah, and still it requires a lot of, like you said, also getting layers off from modern culture because like at first you really, or I was like really, because of hierarchical systems, really shut up, which already starts in school. Like you don't say yes, you don't say no anymore. And I also was wondering, like, or I was thinking while you were talking about this whole thing of time, like that most decision making processes, I mean, politics is a very bad example. It's like very much far on the other side of what you're talking about. But like, for me, it also looks like they just stopped using any kind of tools from any context to actually have communication happening. It's just throwing stuff at each other. They don't have any kind of communication culture. It's so much hierarchical, and especially because of time.
Yeah.
Because there is this thing happening about like we have to make a decision fast, and this fast thing that kills so many things, and also a lot of a lot of our boxes, our survival strategies, like we are so trained to have no patience for these, what you're talking about. It is very detailed, and maybe there happens a bump every 5 seconds that there's an emotional reactivity until you come maybe to a decision for this proposal, and I'm sure that it will be very different over the time the more people are like more free from all their reactivity in a way. Like that's the image I have.
Yeah, that
Mm.
it's so relevant that using the different tools of a possibilitator makes it possible for a person has made it possible for me to make time
Mm-hmm.
and not be so, like you said, like pushed and pulled
Mm-hmm.
by these different drivers about time. And again, this is like this parental dictatorship that happens inside, hurry up, do it better already. These are all
Yeah,
these
which
time
already
pressures.
comes from a hierarchical system because it's a concept. Like actually we don't have a rush, but we think we're on a rush, and at the same time we make so many messes because of that.
Yeah. And in
Yeah.
politics, the time pressure is also uh, like increased or affected by just the scope of how many people politicians govern.
Mm-hmm.
And I put that in air quotes because even, I'm a Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
I come from Canada. I have a Canadian passport. I, live under the so-called laws of Canada, and yet I don't have the experience that the government decides for me.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people do. And during COVID, this became really remarkable that people were up in arms about the government can't decide for me and I'm deciding for myself. And yet it still was this, what you're talking about, this hierarchical mindset of somebody else decides or somebody else doesn't decide. which is very different from I decide. I
Mm,
use my authority, and sometimes I use my authority to ask someone else who might have information that I don't have for possibilities.
mhm,
And then it, yeah, just this, all these different moves, all these different steps that go into shifting a hierarchical power, modern culture, patriarchal structure into a torus of toruses, so
mhm,
that it really, the fractal, the holographic bigger picture is a full out torus, which is, I think, what the earth already is. And in that sense, one of the things I love about Torus technology is that I notice how it empowers me, and empowers me to work with other people so that we can be part of the alive torus of Gaia, rather than
mm,
holding ourselves in these wonky patterns that then create these consequences, like, massive pollution and disparity between different people in different regions who have or don't have different resources. And I this is partly why I'm so turned on about Torus technology, whichever bits and pieces of it coming into more places, more spaces. Of course, conscious feelings work as absolutely part of it. And yeah, and then the technologies themselves, I'm so turned on that you might start bringing more, say, resistance decision making in with these young people that you're working with, and then start opening up these other areas of like feelings, and how much is still possible even when a person is really a no to opening up their about their how they feel. This is an area I'm especially interested in, because there are so many people still who are numb emotionally and energetically. They're really locked by the freezing of their emotions in these emotional kind of, I don't know, masses or knots or packages that are held in them in their systems.
mm. Yeah. And I'm also especially interested in bringing this in choreography work, which is maybe a very small area, but it's what turns me on. And like I have worked with a lot of different choreographers, and the dance world, it's like huge. There's so much stuff and so much different works about. But if when I do like create a piece with dancers together, either they're like mostly they're not professional dancers, and but still it's like what, yeah, what does it mean professional dance anyway? It's like
They're not being paid yet.
yeah, and it's like this, yeah, I'm interested like that mostly the pieces that are created are really their own, and coming from them, and how, and I noticed that I am using resistance decision making without naming it when it comes to movement, and that when I, that my experience, at least with young adults or teenagers, when we're talking about the context of possibility management, like we have rage clubs, like we're using tools and distinctions so that people feel their anger or can feel their conscious anger, and for me it's also a way of opening up the body again,
Yeah,
because anger makes you, the feeling of your anger makes you pretty much also aware of your body. That's how I experience it, and coming into the center, like center,
yeah,
which in dance is a very basic thing you can be trained in, but you still can't feel your center. And um, and I noticed that when I'm using decision making processes, for example, in a dance class, when we work on a piece, that at the beginning when they didn't move before, they're mostly like the survival strategy, like movement can be so open, so much opening up for modern culture at first to go into phase one of feelings work, just to first feel the physical body, and then the emotional body is more accessible. What when you have like kids coming from school having be sit all day, and then at the beginning of the class I make a proposal, and they are like and they have this, that's why I was asking, that they're adaptive. Okay, this is an adult, she asked me something, and then after we moved, and I use also anger, fear, sadness, joy in a way with music to get them, feeling their feelings. They're so much more open up. And then when I introduce then a proposal and we do resistance decision making, it's a completely different world. Like suddenly I have only hands up with fingers. And it makes so much more alive. And yeah, and I think this could be a whole other topic about Torus technology being used in different, in different settings of group contexts.
Yeah.
Because so far, I guess also like you, I experienced Torus technology being used in community work, community places, bridge houses, yeah, and not so much in project work, let's say. And yeah, that's where I would like to put it in.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many applications where that I would love to see Torus technology be introduced and see what happens.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for this insight of Torus technology. I guess there's so much more questions, and yeah, I would put all the stuff that you mentioned. We can put it down below the video. You can find it there when you watch it. And yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for this, Christina.
Yeah.
I feel glad that we've talked about what we've talked about, and there's so much more to it that
Hmm.
that fills it out in a way. And mm, yeah, it was such a livening week to be using Torus technology, to learn Torus technology, to discover how to train other people to use it.
Hmm.
And in a way, this fractal nature of it is so it's so typical. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.